Hello and welcome to day 5 of Camp Legend. We've made it through an entire week and I've had a lot of fun creating and challenging myself in different ways, and I hope that you have as well. So today our story, we read Rainbow Weaver, and I thought the story was great and that it was in English and in Spanish, but told the story of what really happened to many people back in Guatemala, which is where it takes place. And I learned about this when I read the author's note at the back of the book when it talked about the Mayan people in contemporary Guatemala, and that they are among the most skilled and artistic weavers in the world. And I just thought it was so fascinating what even just a little girl could do to make a big difference in her community as well as impact her family. So my challenge for you today, for our STEAM challenge, is going to be, what can you do with a plastic bag? We are once again going to be using our engineering design process, and I want you to start out with that phase 1, which we're very familiar with at this point, and that ask phase. And in this phase, we want to ask all the questions. The problem we're trying to solve, can you explain it to someone else? Are there any constraints or limitations? Just ask all those questions. So let's take a minute right now, come up with those questions that might come to your head when I first ask you, what can you do with a plastic bag? All right, go. All right, let's pull our thinking to a pause here for a moment and think about some of those questions that you had when I asked you, what can you do with a plastic bag? I know that it got my mind going about different things, even like, what happens to a plastic bag if I throw it out? In the story, Ishelle just found them all along the road there and along the fields where they were doing farming, and so she picked them up. And I know that I've even seen a lot of littering and not so much recycling or even throwing them away. But if we do throw them away, where do they go? So those were just some of the questions that came into my mind as I was doing this. So, phase 2, any guesses? You got it. The imagine phase. So this is where we start brainstorming those ideas. I pose the question to you, what can you do with a plastic bag? So now we're going to start brainstorming from some of those questions. They might have made you think a little bit differently, that those ones that you came up in the ask phase. So now imagine, what could you do with some of those questions and turn them into ideas? So let's take a few minutes and start brainstorming those. Once again, feel free to do research if you need to, if you're just completely stuck and, man, I don't know where to go. Feel free to jump online and research ideas about ways to repurpose plastic bags. Think about, what could you personally do with a plastic bag in your house right now, or maybe even more than one plastic bag. All right, start imagining. All right, let's bring our thinking to a pause here, or I should say our imagining to a pause. And I even had to do some research myself here about some ideas, and I had some ideas as I was reading the story, but even in my quick look here, I came up with even more, so I'm pretty excited. I have an idea of what I might want to make. So we're going to, once again, set our imagining next to our ask, because we might need to reference those later. And we're going to move into our planning phase. So take all those questions you asked, all those ideas you imagined, and start planning out what you are going to do. Start thinking of the materials you'll need to gather, anything that you might need to make it happen, and you might need to use some more research in order to learn how to do new things. I know I personally am going to have to watch several YouTube tutorials for my idea, but go ahead and start planning. And I'm going to hold off on showing you my imagined thoughts and my planning thoughts until I get towards the end and see if you can guess what I'm going to try and make. All right, start planning. Right. I know I have my plan set in front of me here, and I am ready to start moving into my creating phase. So I am going to start creating, and show you some snippets of what I'm doing and see if you can guess when I put it together. And it's probably going to take me a little bit of time, so I'm going to have to keep on working on it throughout the week, and I'll have to come back to it because I don't think I will be able to learn this new thing in one day, at least enough to accomplish what I hope to. So I will post my picture on today's Look and Learn, so you'll have to look and see for what Mrs. Wood made for today to see my final product. So I am excited to see what you guys come back with, and we will check in a little bit. All right, welcome back. I hope that you had some fun exploring what you could do with the plastic bag and came up with something cool and exciting. Maybe you're like me and you haven't finished it in one day and you're going to have to come back to it. Totally fine. It's all about creating what's meaningful to you. So even though you might not be done, think about moving forward in the engineering design process and think about the testing part. So we want to test our design from the beginning to the end. Does it serve the purpose that we hoped it would? Does it function? Have someone else use whatever you created for its intended purpose. Have them let you know if they see anything that they would make any changes on. And come back to it. I already know there's some changes I need to make on mine, and that's okay. It's my first attempt, and I'm fully embracing the fail forward, and that it's my first attempt in learning, and I am totally cool with that, and I can laugh at my mistakes. So gather that feedback, and then, as always, we move into our improve phase. How can you take that feedback and make your product better? So whatever it is, your creation, think about how that feedback would change your thinking and how you created it to make it even better. Just because it's your original design, you get kind of attached to it, and that's okay. But there's always improvements that you can make to designs, maybe how it looks, how it's structured. So think about the feedback that you got and how you can improve your design. And then, of course, the last part is sharing is caring. We have to share what we created, and that's where you go down to the look and learn at the end. Make sure you submit that roll call, and when you put your picture in that roll call, it will show up at the bottom, and we can see what everyone's creations are and what everyone created with the challenge of what can you do with the bag. So I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. Make sure you share because I am always looking. They're exciting to see, and I am looking forward to seeing you again next week with a bunch more STEAM challenges and stories, and we'll have lots of fun. See you next week. Have a great weekend.